creator of a local treasure hunt across the river from where I'm at currently in the county that I work. He was a native of that county. He grew up in that county and had a lot of love for his own heritage and the history of that county, and decided to put together this treasure hunt. We're going to learn a little bit about him. We're going to learn a little bit about how and why he put this together, and then we're going to see how this thing progresses over the next year. This treasure hunt is 365 days long. It is a year-long treasure hunt. I'm very, very pleased to welcome Mr. Brack Rayles.
Hi, guys. How we doing?
Mr. Brack. Another thing to remind you guys is that Brack is on a phone tonight. He doesn't really have a full-size PC. So if you have a question that you're curious about after watching the clip, please just tag me in the chat here, and I will make sure that I hit him up with it so that he gets the opportunity to answer it. But I gotta say, when I first heard about this in late December, I was completely intrigued. I knew that I didn't get to spend enough time in Switzerland County and running around to look for keys, but I knew the second that Mr. Carfield spoke to me about it that he was going to light up like a Christmas tree, and it was right down his alley. So I knew at that point you had something that was going to be really special in a sense. But before we get into that portion of it, the first thing I wanted to know about is that, I've seen what you've done. I've seen what you've created. But, how did we get to that point? Were you a history fan as a kid? Tell us a little bit about where the love for this kind of thing came from.
Yeah, so as a kid, no, absolutely not. I was not a fan of history as a kid. I would guess that my love for the history, in particular my hometown, came from reading my local paper. So my mother, for the last decade, has gotten me a subscription to the VV newspaper, and I've read it religiously every single time I get it in the mail. You had mentioned that I don't live in the county any longer, but I'm an hour away. But that newspaper has played as kind of my connection for the last 10 years or so, and that is probably when I would say the majority of my love for history itself and in particular my hometown really started to birth itself.
I noticed another thing. I kind of creeped a little bit on some of your Facebook and stuff like that.
Sure.
You're definitely into your own heritage, your family tree, where it comes from, and some of that stuff too.
Sure.
I think that kind of plays back into it a little bit. The book I showed you, there was local stories and stuff. I saw some Rayles from a class of 1929 in a picture in there, and I hadn't had a chance to mention that to you. But is that your family?
Well, so the Rayles name itself is actually connected all the way back to the beginning of Switzerland County. There was a man by the name of John Rayle, Rayl. But from there, it gets a little sketchy until it gets to my third or fourth great grandfather, who his name was Scott Rayle, Rayl, and that is a family member that I know that my father has talked about before, and that I can trace. But between John and Scott, I'm a little bit perplexed as to how that connection is made. Now, the person that you're mentioning from the 20s, I would have to see that name and who they were. But yeah, I go back all the way to Scott so far. Yeah.
Yeah. So I misspelled your name when I created this. I didn't realize that there was an E in it. And the first name that I saw did not have the E in the name, but it was a Rayles in 1929. I went, man, I bet you that's some of his family. I bet he'll know if I ask him, because he seems very detail orientated like that.
Sure. Yeah, it does split somewhere. It does. Actually, the Scott Rayle, I think after that one, someone started to add an E, and I have no idea why they did that. There's some lore about it that goes back in the family history, but I'm still not certain why they did it.
Yeah, I was always wondering if things like that were like maybe a dialect thing, or it just kind of changed over time and people just added it instinctively.
Sure.
But I mean, so I really thought that when I hit you up with that question, you was going to hit me with a long childhood love of history and heritage and stuff, and it really kind of threw me for a loop there for a second.
No.
And, go ahead and we'll fast forward. When was the first time that it popped into your head to create this elaborate treasure hunt, and how did that all come about? When was the first time you thought about it, and then how did you develop it from there?
As far as the first time that I had thought about it, I mean, I think with most, probably, and with most of your audience, I mean, we've all kind of heard the stories of Forrest Fenn. Now I'm on to the Oak Island. Now I'm on to the Blind Frog Ranch, those kinds of things. But probably when I got introduced to Forrest Fenn, which was probably 4 or 5 years ago, I would say that at least the idea of creating my own treasure hunt came about. Now, the idea of actually placing one in my hometown, in my home county, really just started to develop I'd say about a year ago. And once the idea popped into the head, then I started rolling with it. I'm 9 months to a year into this project, even though the project now has only been public for 2 months. So, I mean, I've got quite a few months worth of work that I've already put into this. And, I guess the reason that I started it was, I just, as I was doing this research, as I started to find these clips in the BV newspaper about notable people, places, or things that have occurred in my hometown, I learned quickly that there is no shortage of interesting things. No shortage. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of people have come through that place that really shocked me. I mean, the names that you hear all the time are obviously the Dufour family, right? Because they came to the area in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and they get a lot of the credit for starting Switzerland County and starting BV with their wine crop. And you hear some other historical references when you're growing up as a kid, but it kind of stops at the most famous of stories. But when you and your audience obviously know this too, once you start learning about one thing and you want to dig a little bit deeper, then it just kind of opens up, and the rabbit hole, if you start chasing it, becomes larger and larger and larger. So that's why I say that there's just no shortage of interesting things that have happened, or interesting people that have lived or passed by Switzerland County.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Just researching some or trying to find answers for some of your clues that you have had, I've uncovered some real interesting stories.
Yeah.
Just reading the history that I didn't even have any idea existed. So it's really opened my eyes that, there's a lot of information out there about the places that we live or we habitat, I guess. Habitate, I don't think of the word, but there's a lot of stuff. And then if you didn't go look for it, you would have no idea some of the stuff that had happened.
Right.
And like some of these clues are just like that.
Well, and I think it's important that you just brought that up, because I don't think Switzerland County is unique in the fact that there are numerous instances of interesting things that happen in cities throughout the country, from the smallest of towns to the largest of cities, right? I mean, if every one of us take the time to look, we can find something interesting. It's out there.
Yeah, the one thing I can say about Switzerland County and researching the old maps and the old newspapers is that a lot of the written publications for the county itself are archived on the internet, and they're very easy to come about if you know how to look.
They are. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So that there's a living history that's right there that you can sit at your computer and just figure out, really fast. Speaking, getting back to this treasure hunt. So you come up with the idea.
Yep.
And now you've hidden countless amount of keys, from what I understand, at least more than 50. I don't know the total number. And then you decided to develop clues for some of the keys, not all, but some.
Right.
What went into the clue development for your timed releases for everybody?
It all starts with the notable person, place, or thing. It always starts there. And then being that this treasure hunt, and I put that kind of in air quotes because it's not a traditional one, right? I'm not placing the keys in places where people have to dig or be on people's properties or those sorts of things. The clues themselves, I have to kind of marry, where I'm going to put a key with the interesting part of the notable piece of information that I want to get out. So that's kind of a fluid process for me. It's not necessarily set in stone, up until about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I actually release the clue itself. I try to keep those things as fluid as I can because, circumstances arise where sometimes I might need to change a predetermined clue that I had before I publish it, or before I make it public to everybody else.
And also, like on the website is Dufour'sKeys.com, and it's on a web, and then there's a web page for it on Facebook as well. You guys got to go sit there and make sure you follow that and share that out. That's the benefit of having Brack on here tonight, is to try to boost his, just the traffic on the sites, because it's very interesting and a lot of fun. But, since we're talking about clues, I first, one of the first things I noticed is not necessarily the clue print itself on there, but I feel like the imagery in the background plays a part into it as well. And so I look at the pictures and I'm all about the pictures as well, because I know that somewhere along the line that plays into it as well. Don't divulge it, but was that part of the thought process?
That process came pretty early. Yeah. If you've ever looked into Forest Fin, or if you've ever looked into some of the cipher codes that are published online, the ones that are solved and the ones that are not solved, you can tell that there's a layering of information that a lot of times gets released on those sorts of things, right? And I knew pretty early on that that's what I was going to do with my process as well. Not only does it make it fun for me, the creator of this, right? I mean, I'm a creative guy, and my juices start flowing when I get to create. So adding that layer to this is important to me. But I also learned early on too that, you've got some folks that are high on the history metric itself, and then you have others that know kind of like the surface history, but they know where certain places are, right? So I wanted to start to make this applicable to those that are just getting started and to those that have been in the county for 100 years, right? Because I'm running into that. You take Nick, for example. I mean, that fella knows his local history, right? But if I were to just take maybe say his son, who wouldn't know that right off the bat, but maybe he can garner some clues from the pictures that I'm releasing back behind them. Yeah.
That's really cool. Question from the chat has come up. Hey, have you considered the possibility that if a key is found by someone who does not know about the hunt, and what are your thoughts on what happens if that's the case, and if it's the special key?
Yeah. So, okay, that's one of these processes that has changed since the beginning of the project itself, right? Because I was finding that there are keys out there that have moved that I've placed, because I've went back and I've checked, right? And they're gone. But I have people that haven't now claimed those keys. I knew early on, though, that I would need to develop some sort of a process where I knew it was my key that I was placing. So I went through and I had actually etched every single clue or every single key that I had placed. Well, like I said, that process has changed, where now I'm placing keys and there's an insignia or a small little logo that sits on the keys that I'm placing.
Gotcha. Another question from the chat has come up. It was asking that if did your family work on the railroads? They had a great uncle that changed their name pronunciation from Kerr to Carr based on that notion. So she was basically wondering if that's where your name change may have came from.
I'm not aware of any past family members that worked on the railroad. Obviously, there isn't a railroad that came through Vivi. It had been talked about for 200 years, but it never did occur. So no, I'm not aware of that being in my family at all.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. It's funny that you mentioned railroad because I think I see a railroad track in one of your clues. So you've created.
Yeah, you're into this. I can tell. I mean, there's been no one else that's mentioned that in any correspondence I've had with anybody. But you bring up the railroad. That's funny.
Well, I sit on Sunday and I brainstorm when Nick has problems. I give him a different perspective. I'm not going to go out and look for it because it's his family thing, but I still have fun kind of helping solve the clues.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
And so, and then the other part of that is that so you said that, you've got these timed release clues that come out. Basically now they're coming out on Fridays. But you also, if I understand correctly, you place keys in just random public spots around the county as well. Is that correct?
So nothing is random about the placement of the keys. But having said that, yes, there are clues that are released and there are keys that are placed in the county as well. Yes, not everything. Obviously, I mean, with Vivi being the hub of where the DuFour started things, that's where most of the history has occurred, right? But there are still, I will say, historical, again, I'll go back to this phrase, historical people, places, or things that happened or occurred outside of the town of Vivi.
Yeah, and got it. So now let's get to the fun part, the part that everybody probably really wants to know about.
Yeah.
What did your wife say when you said, "Hey, I'm going to create this treasure hunt. And I'm going to pull $5,000 out of the bank account and I'm going to put it up for a grand prize"?
To be perfectly honest, I didn't share it with her until after I released, until after I got a little bit of traction.
Got a little bit of traction. And what is and then going a little fast forward here, you're going to have basically like a community meeting at the end of this. Is that going to be in December, or it's going to be at the end of next year?
Yeah. So, I mean, I say a year-long treasure hunt basically because I want people to stay involved for a longer period of time. It'll probably, I think the first clue that I released was either on the 20th or 21st of December. I think that's going to be a hard time to have this end of the year kind of ceremony. I'll probably do it either a week or maybe two before that. That way it gives people an opportunity to come to the event and still be able to do their celebrations that they normally do.
And another quick question, because this is something that just popped in my head as we were going about it. When will be the last clue release date? What will be the last Friday that you release a clue?
Yeah, that's a good question too, and I don't have a strict answer to that one yet. When I figure out that date of the ceremony, then I will figure out the last clue date itself. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't change. That particular date doesn't change. I'm trying to be coy a little bit with way I'm answering you here. It doesn't change the outcome of where the key is, if that makes, if I can say that and give enough information. Okay.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So, and I was just curious because I didn't. So does that mean that there is a hard number of clues for the keys that are hit, or there's not a hard number? You haven't decided that portion of it yet.
I have not decided. It all depends on when that ceremony date is. Yeah. Gotcha. And and a lot of that, I want that to correspond either with maybe a Main Street Vivi, First Fridays they have, or something like that, that I want to try to piggyback on something where I know a crowd will already be in town for. So once I figure out that date, believe me, like I said, there's no shortage of interesting things, interesting historical notables. I've got clues that could run into 2023 if I needed to extend it, but we're going to do this year-long process and see how it goes.
So now I'm going to put another ball in your court because everything, because post, we're going to say post-COVID, because I'm going to say post the downturn of COVID, everything's back to pretty much normal, even though it still exists. This was a really good thought process to get families to doing something together, get people out and in the community looking around for things, getting out of the house, turning off their computers at night.
Yeah.
That wasn't, and I can tell that that wasn't in the pre-planning of any of this. However, does the thought of making this maybe not necessarily an annual thing or be doing something like this again, has it crossed your mind based on the response that you've gotten to this one so far, or is it kind of stressful?
Yes and yes and yes and yes. I'm having an absolute blast doing this. You know, now that I'm in middle 40s, I'm very nostalgic at this point. I needed to find something that was important for me to do at this point. I've actually been asked that question a couple of times, and I'm a little surprised by it because I really haven't given a whole lot of thought past December of 2022, but maybe I should. You know, maybe I should, because you're right. It is having an impact on families that I didn't foresee, but that is by far my favorite part of this so far is the stories of families getting out and doing this. I've always been, let me just say, I've always been proud of where I'm from, but being that I get to share some of these notable things even with my kids now who aren't from Vevey, never grew up in Vevey, you know, they've been raised in Greensburg. They're, you know, part of their heritage is going to be Greensburg itself, but I'm always sharing with them things that I've learned over the course of this last year. So knowing that there are families out there, I'm telling you, it makes me feel 10 feet tall that that's occurring. Like even tonight, I come home from this swim meet, right? I jump online. There's a comment on the website itself from a gal named Jen Wakefield. And she says, "I love that you're doing this. My family and I are so excited to start hunting." It makes me feel 10 feet tall when I get comments like that. I love it. I absolutely love it.
You know, I think in a sense, you know, based on current, I don't hate to use the word political, but just current climate in this country, that's something that has a very wholesome base to it and very much fun attached to it that everybody can participate in. Nobody's excluded. Nobody's kept out. Even if you're stuck at home in a wheelchair and can't, you know, go out and look, you can sit here on your computer and research it for somebody else in your family to work on.
Absolutely.
There's a way for everybody to participate. And I think that's something that even, you know, not just a local community needs something like that, but, you know, the potential for other communities nationwide, things like that need to occur to get people out of the house and stop watching TV sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why I thought this was such a great idea, because, you know, there's probably 3 people that I've seen in chat tonight that are within a striking distance of these clues. The rest of them are pretty much nationwide. We've had some from out of the country. But, you know, maybe it can inspire somebody else to look up their local heritage, or maybe participate and start something in their area as well.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I was reading a comment. It was kind of funny, but that's the beauty of it, and it's really got me so intrigued about it. So if people don't necessarily know or didn't really pay that close attention to the news broadcast, which I'm sure that could have been a little bit longer and explained a little bit more in depth about it, but I know how they are for time.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, the portion about just placing keys where people can find them on public property so that there's no trespassing, nothing egregious to find a key.
Right.
Did anybody stop you when you were placing keys out there? Did anybody look at you funny, like, "Hey, what's that guy doing?" Did you ever get any of that?
You know, it's funny. So far, I don't think I've been caught. Now, I will say, when I went to place the key, I had gotten up about 4:30 that morning because I knew I needed to be on the road by 5. And I needed to get to Vevey by 6, because if I don't get to Vevey by 6, people start driving in their cars, right? They're going to work and they're getting up and they're getting their coffees and they're rustling around. Well, I show up at VV at 6 o'clock in the morning. I go to place that key, and sure enough, a car drives right past where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I'm like, I can't get up any earlier. I'm not going to get up any earlier for this process. I need to find a different way to do this. But really, that's the only instance that I've kind of ran into where I think someone actually might have caught me in the process. I've had some other people that obviously they know what I'm up to now, and so I can tell that they kind of are giving me that eye, like they want to look, and then they'll do a little double take just in case they see me hiding a key. But really, I've been very fortunate with that process so far.
I was just getting ready to say, the way that you said that, do you at some point do you think that might be a little bit of paranoia setting in as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I've driven past several times places that I wanted to place a key, and I'll wait for traffic to fly right by, and at the right moment I'll jump out and put the key where I need to put it.
Well, I'm telling you, as far as the whole county of Switzerland goes, and all of the areas that you could possibly have put, you could probably redo this contest in this county every year for a long time. And just based on the history that I've read, you could actually put some pretty coy clues out there. And not only, everybody, just want you to know that these clues aren't just basic, hey, Google a history lesson here and figure it out. These clues are well thought out. They are riddle typed. This is some real riddler stuff here. The way that they're presented, everything about it could have something to do with it. And you want to talk about a great use of your time to sit down and decipher a riddle and a clue to try to find a treasure. And then knowing at the end of it, there could be $5,000. Has anybody come on board as far as sponsorship? I know you mentioned that at some point. I don't remember where I heard it, but you were thought about that process.
Yeah, no sponsors yet. I've made a couple of contacts with some folks, and it's that's just a process that I know that I need to go through. Now, obviously, I don't want to have to cover the 5,000 on my own, but I will. That was never the intention with this. I did want to include, especially local businesses. I mean, if the idea is to get as many people from Southeast Indiana and Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky, to get as many people as I can from those areas into Switzerland County. I mean, I obviously want as many businesses in those areas to know about this process as well, and I want to include them. I've got a couple of different ways that I've made that possible, but I think really the one that I'm most excited about maybe sharing, and it's been on my website for a while now, but I think I'm now to the point where I need to start sharing with sponsors, and that is an early clue partner, becoming an early clue partner. So if I publish clues on Fridays, I want to start the process of including an early clue partner. And basically what that means is I would give this business or organization access to that clue, say on the Monday prior. So they would get 5 full days to share that with their customers or their foot traffic before I would even publish it myself on the website or on the Facebook. So for me, that's one of the most exciting things that I want to really get out there, because I mean, why would I not want, if I want to see VV, if I want to add to VV's tourism and foot traffic, and I want businesses in VV and Switzerland County to make more money, all those kinds of things that kind of get included into this process. I think becoming an early clue partner would probably be the most beneficial thing that I can do for businesses or organizations in Switzerland County.
Yeah, I think coming up with a means of sponsorship, to me, when I thought about this, the initial is always the hard part, right? The first time you do anything, always the hardest part.
Yeah, it is.
This process is very repeatable, and it really does benefit the community in the long run. As far as it could be tourism,
Right.
if it's a shorter span, maybe not so long. I mean, there's lots of ways that
Right.
you can do this, where you could develop some interest as far as marketing goes and sponsorship, to where
Right.
you can make this thing, and make people come to town to play. And that's I think things like, I think far ahead a lot of the times. I go way too
Yeah.
far ahead in my brain. And
Yeah.
that's where I went with this. I went, this could be not necessarily a festival, but this could be a thing to really boost tourism, because the county's
Yeah.
full of history and they promote
Yeah.
that. You can just add right onto it. You can, hey, you want to show up in Switzerland County for a week and go out on a treasure hunt while you're here, and it's available. I mean, stuff like that really
Right.
resonates in my brain. So that's another reason I'm just as excited about your hunt as a lot of people are.
Yeah, and I want to make the point while I'm on here. I'm not trying to replace any current organization's efforts or anything like that. This is just really me adding to what's already there. You know what I mean? This is really an expression of the love that I have for the place that I grew up. And if it adds and if it benefits my county, I am all in 100%.
So, we're getting close. I'm getting very close to the end of my list of questions for the day. And if nobody has anything else, that's pretty good. But, as far as this goes, breaking it all down, so far we're 3 months basically into this process. How do you rate it so far? How do you rate the process of the way you've shown the public how to do this? How has it rated? Is it a high score, low score, or even the middle? Is there things you wanted to do different?
Let me just say that the score probably has changed. You know what I mean? Because when I started this process, obviously I had this kind of list of things that I wanted to accomplish. But now that I've got families involved, now that I've got people out looking for actual keys, now that I'm getting comments back, like I said, this process has changed a little bit. And so as far as rating the way that I think this process is going, I got to be a 9 out of 10, just because I'm having a blast. Now, obviously, the acquiring sponsors, advertisers, that kind of thing, that's where the most amount of improvement, I think, has the chance. That's where I can see the most amount of improvement happening. And I want that to happen. But as far as the game or the event itself, it's a 9. I'm having an absolute blast with it. The comments that I get from folks, they're having fun. Now, there are some folks out there that I've already promised some therapy for, because they're having a hard time with the clues. But even with that, I'm having a blast with, because it just makes me giggle,
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some thought process behind it. And if you was to have to put a number on what kind of number would you have out there for a base level sponsorship? Because if there was somebody in here that say wanted to chip in and be a sponsor of Dufour'sKeys Keys, what would that take? What would that take in your brain?
Yeah. So what I've had advertised on the website for a while now, or since I developed the website itself. So like what I had was there's web sponsorships, right? I'll put your logo and your link on my website, and that's fine. I think what I've learned about the website portion itself is that there's not as many people venturing on to the actual site as they are wanting the interaction that they get from, say, Facebook, right? So even what I have listed on the website, I'm more than happy to accommodate anybody that would want to do that. You just go to Dufour'sKeys.com and then click on advertising at the top of the page, right? And that'll give you my list of what I had initially thought was going to be the way that I made money, right? But at this point, if someone wanted to chip in and they wanted to, say, have me mention, either their business or a product or their organization, I mean, $100 would go a long way. But let me just say that really, if you're a business in any of those areas that I described earlier, and you want to be a part of this process, become an early clue partner. Because even if you have folks from Northern Kentucky that maybe can't make it into Switzerland County as often, but that business is an early clue partner, I can see people just walking into their store, even in Northern Kentucky, and saying, hey, can I have access to that early clue? Because I'm just curious. I want to see how that process works. And so the early clue partner, what I have listed is 150 a month. And obviously that would give you every Monday of that month where you could share that with your brick and mortar customers 5 days before I would share.
Well, in all honesty, I think that's probably a very good plan going forward. I really look to see this continue. I looked at this to go beyond year one. I really think that this is something that could really develop, and it would be very beneficial for the whole community, whether it be just in Switzerland County or Northern Kentucky, Southwest Ohio. I feel like you can really do that with it.
So and we would say once this process is complete, when December comes and rolls around, I'm willing to obviously help anyone that wants to get this started in their communities, right? Because it would be hard for me to say, jump into Carrollton, Kentucky, and be as passionate as I am about Carrollton, because I'm not from there, right? So I think this process, it really does take someone who is passionate about where they are from. And so if I were to have a list of folks that had that, I'd be more than willing to help out in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. There's and there, I was just noticing how broad the audience was tonight from so many different places and lots of great people in here today. And I'm sure everybody's gotten some enjoyment out of it. Also, we got a lot of traction on Facebook today. And like I said, I've had several people contact me immediately after I shared several links with them.
Yeah.
But Brack, I really want to say, thank you for doing this. I'm going to clip this video up for you, and I will make a special version for you you can embed it where you want. Give me just about a day or two. You can use this link for now. But if anybody else has any more questions for Mr. Rayles, please hit me now before we move on to the next portion of tonight's show. But thanks again.
Let me just say, if your audience is more into the metal detecting, right? This is kind of like your wheelhouse. Your
metal detecting, magnet fishing, prospecting is pretty much the group. It's all treasure hunters.
And I want to eventually get there once my kids get out of the house, right? But we're all in this history game, right? Every one of us is in this history game. So I kind of feel a little bit of a kindred spirit with the rest of you.
Dude, it's absolutely been a pleasure. I was really glad to get a chance to pick your brain today, and well, I'm sure I'm going to keep in contact and keep up with it.
Please do.
The thing of it is that everybody if you think this process through, if it's something that you would like to try in your area, if it's something you would like to develop for your community, if you've got a place that you love, Brack's more than willing to help out. You can reach him at Dufour'sKeys on Facebook. Very easy to get a hold of him. He usually responds within about an hour and is a very helpful guy. I want to thank you for the interview time tonight, and I will talk to you very soon. I'm going to move on to the next portion of the show.
Thanks, Shane. Appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, have a good night, Brack. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Well, absolutely, everybody. I just want to say that is really fun. And if you haven't looked at the clip, if you haven't been to the website, I really encourage you to do so, because what he's come up with is absolutely done a lot for the community that we live in. There's a lot of people looking for keys. There's a lot of people out there searching, getting together with their families. It's really brought people together in a time where everybody just wants to argue over stuff. So that's really cool.